Inhale, exhale. Continue for one more minute. All right. All right, my dear friends. Able to hear me? Yes, wonderful. So, good evening to folks in India, good morning to folks in the US, and good afternoon to folks in the Europe. It's a festival day. Happy Ugadi to who is celebrating Ugadi. Happy Gudi Padwa and Happy New Year who is celebrating New Year today. Coincidentally, it fell on a Saturday when we are having this class. So I hope all of you have done your wisdom sharing session. So we will get on with our second session of the Living in Coherence series. So today, as the title says, we're going to look at models of consciousness. But I want to quickly recap on what we looked at last week. Let me just quickly share. So last week we started off with, for those of you who missed last week's session, you can always look at the session recording in YouTube. It is available in YouTube. So we looked at what is consciousness. Consciousness is the state of being aware. It's about being aware of any external or internal things like thoughts, feelings, and other sensations. And the key point is knowing that you are not them. So that is that consciousness is something that you feel by not getting lost in the external object or internal object. So that's what we looked at, by knowing that you are not them. That is what we talk about witness consciousness. And it's just awareness. In a simple word definition is awareness of you have to be aware of it, aware of something with that space between awareness and that particular thing, be it a thought, be it a feeling, be it an external object. All right. So, and then we also looked at what are the qualities of consciousness. Again, consciousness, we can call it anything. We can call it the divinity within us. We can call it as the soul. We can call it as the godliness within us. It has these 6 primary attributes, which are, we saw those: intelligence. Each of us have that innate intelligence in each one of us. We are freedom. It is absolute perfection. It is collective. Consciousness is not individual. Consciousness is collective, right? And then it's not limited. It's not limited in capacity, and that is what we call as abundance. It is abundant. It is everywhere. It is not that one person is bestowed with more consciousness and the other person is bestowed with less consciousness, or one person is bestowed with more intelligence, the other person is bestowed with less intelligence. No, it's not that. So the attributes of consciousness are the same, and it is collective, it is abundant. And then the last quality of consciousness is bliss. Right? Anytime you are in that blissful state without a reason, anytime you are joyful without a reason. So none of these need an external factor for consciousness. So consciousness has these six. At any time you express your innate intelligence without knowing, without using your rational mind, that means you are exercising your internal intelligence. Similarly, anytime you sense of freedom without any external attributes, then it means the freedom is coming from your consciousness. And anytime you're acting spontaneously from your innate intelligence, things turn out absolutely perfect. It doesn't matter whether you have learned that skill or not, but anytime you tap into the deeper consciousness, things are absolutely perfect. And collective consciousness, we talked about it, abundance and bliss. So this is what we briefly covered last week. And then we also saw what is coherence. Coherence is the alignment of energy, wisdom, and consciousness. And coherence in science is basically alignment of the waves, right? In phase, coherent waves. So basically all the waves align. That is what you see, the energy, wisdom, consciousness. So your energy should be aligned to your wisdom, and wisdom should be aligned to your consciousness. And anytime we know that we are not completely conscious, that means it doesn't mean that the consciousness has diminished. Consciousness never diminishes. Consciousness never grows. Consciousness is constant, like the moonlight that you see here in this picture. But what changes is the clouds, is the fog that hides the consciousness, hides our inner light. What those clouds are pretty much the thoughts and emotions that each one of us have. When we feel stressed or tired, we are at a low level of consciousness. When we are at a low energy state, we cannot concentrate or focus. The processing of information by your brain slows down. So there is a dependence information relationship between these three: energy, wisdom, and consciousness. Again, a wonderful formula provided to us by Patriji. So when you are more energetic, you are a lot more conscious. You're able to absorb a lot more information. You're able to perform at your highest level. Similarly, when you tap into your inner wisdom, you also elevate your energy, you elevate your consciousness. For example, we are worried about something and someone comes and clarifies, provides you some very important piece of information that you didn't know. Then suddenly there's an epiphany. Oh, wow, that's it. The moment you get that clarity, your consciousness shifts, your energy shifts. So there is this fundamental relationship between energy, wisdom, and consciousness. And as we go through this course, we will see quite a few techniques. In fact, next week, we're going to cover a lot of techniques on increasing your energy, altering your consciousness, and enhancing your wisdom. So they're all three are related together. And a level of awareness, as I said, consciousness is also being aware of our thoughts, both inside, thoughts and emotions inside, as well as awareness of what is happening outside. So there are times when you will be alert. There are times when you are feeling quite drowsy. So like we saw last week, sleep, coma, when you are in anesthesia, they're all different states of physical consciousness. So consciousness can be thought of as operating on a continuum from high level of consciousness to a point of being totally unconscious, totally being unaware. When you are heavily anesthetized or when you are in sleep. Again, in sleep, there are different states of consciousness. We saw that last week, like the REM stage, like the dream state, right? The more aware we are of our thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and surroundings, the higher level of consciousness. We'll go through a very quick framework on how that applies. And as I said, the definition, our level of awareness of internal events and external surroundings is known as state of consciousness. I know a lot of us are going through meditation sessions, have been meditators. As we continue meditating, next week we'll look at the science of meditation as well. So as we continue the process of meditation, our level of awareness increases. That implies our level of consciousness increases. And we are able to easily control our level of awareness, manage our extent of consciousness. So that is one technique. The breathwork technique we just did at the beginning of this session, which is called coherent breathing, is another technique. So anything to do with breath alters your state of consciousness, both physiologically and psychologically. So we'll see that. So we know the state of your consciousness, depends on your energy level. That's what we're implying, right? For example, when you are sick, you obviously do not have as much energy. And that also implies when you are sick, you cannot be as productive as you are on a normal day, right? That implies the level of energy that you have, that implies the level of consciousness that you have, right? The state of your consciousness depends on your energy level. With that, we will get into the first model of consciousness, which is tied to energy. Again, Dr. David Hawkins has written several books on these, primary being a map of consciousness and the popular book called Power versus Force. So what he's done is he's given a numeric value to different emotions. And we know emotion is nothing but energy in motion. Anytime you have an emotion, there is energy movement in your body, right? And then that energy carries a frequency. I mean, you can refer to my Mind to Matter videos on the Pyramid Valley YouTube channel. So we did a couple of, I think 2 months, 4 sessions on Mind to Matter a few months ago. So the map of consciousness is based on energy readings that are taken using the technique of muscle testing. The book talks about a lot, and then there are several books out here. So if you look at it, there are a set of emotions that carry lower numbers, whereas there are a set of emotions that carry higher numbers. For example, anger, fear are very low in numbers. So that means that's an emotion that we say is not helpful. That's a negative emotion. That's what we call it, right? And then similarly, being very optimistic, forgiving someone, trust, having that trust that something will be done correctly, something will be perfect, right? And then courage. So these are all at a higher level of consciousness or energy compared to the emotions of fear, grief, shame, guilt. Similarly, the highest level of emotions like joy, gratitude. We practice gratitude. Why we keep talking about gratitude? Gratitude, joy, love, understanding, and peace. In fact, enlightenment is a little bit above peace, I think. So probably at an 800 number. This map doesn't talk about it. So they are at a higher energy levels. So that is what all spiritual scriptures and whatever courses we attend, whatever classes we attend, they all talk about being with positive emotions. But again, tied to our chakra system, positive emotions are heart and above, right? And then negative emotions are survival emotions are more with the lower chakras. So this is the first model of consciousness or energy that we are looking at today. Again, there are a lot more details into it. And you can even devote, the books talk about each of these emotional levels. And they also give you techniques on how to let go of that emotion and move into the next level. Our energy level or consciousness level can be taken as the average amount we spend on a daily basis on any of these emotions. For example, if you or someone is always in a state of fear, then your average energy level or emotion level is around 100. Whereas if you're kind of practicing gratitude, if you're practicing forgiveness, right, during the course of a day, then your average number gets bumped up. That's how you'll have to look at it. So the more you are in the positive emotion state, your level of consciousness is high, your level of energy is high. And as you see here, Level 1 zone is about happy and being productive. That is a zone of normal, healthy, emotional well-being, state of emotional well-being. And then when we get into understanding, love, gratitude, so that is where all the magic happens. All the miraculous stuff happens, right? Synchronicity, extraordinary outcomes, peak performance. So all these. So there is a science behind giving these numbers to each of these negative emotions and positive emotions. And again, we are just calling it negative because we have a bar. We're saying level 1 is this, and then anything below is negative, above is positive. But nevertheless, the emotions below courage are something that we want to get rid of so that we always continue in a higher state of emotion. How meditation and other techniques help us move the spectrum is what we will see over the next couple of classes. Next week is more about the techniques. Even breath work relaxes you, right? Relaxes your physical system and then gets you into a higher level. So the level of consciousness that you are when you are having guilt, when you're repenting, is different from the level of consciousness that you are in when you are trusting something. You are trusting something to happen. Similarly, courage and confidence. The moment you have courage and confidence, the level of consciousness is a lot different, a lot better compared to when you are craving for something, when you are hoping something will happen, right? When you are angry. So that's what this chart talks about. Again, there are a lot of representations. If you type map of consciousness on Google, you'll be able to get a lot of different representations. So with that, now that we know energy impacts the level of awareness, and awareness is what we mean by consciousnness. Now there is a simple framework that we're going to talk about. It's called moments of consciousness. There is this psychologist called Mr. Daniel Levitin, who's done some research. I think there are quite a few research papers published as well. As I say, the processing capacity of our conscious mind has been estimated at 120 bits per second. More than the number, what is important here is that there is a fixed bandwidth to our conscious moments. And in that conscious moment, in that fixed bandwidth, how we use, for example, when you are highly conscious, then we are able to use all those bandwidth consciously. Whereas when you are fearful, then it shrinks. That is what this framework talks about, right? So for those of you, and some of us who are coming from an IT background, it would be very easy for you to refer to, right? So assume there is a limited bandwidth, right? So this moments of consciousness framework talks about there's something called the width or extent of your consciousness. How wide is your consciousness? For example, when you are sick, your conscious bits are less. When you are joyful, then your consciousness bits are wide, right? So let's say it's just fixed capacity. We're going to just use this example of 8 boxes, right? So in those 8 boxes, let's say the 8 boxes are, or 8 bytes are your width of consciousness. When you are sick, it could be 5. When you are angry, it could be different, right? So there is something called the width of consciousness. And then there is something called the content of consciousness. So what is it that you're carrying in your conscious mind, in those moments of consciousness, right? So we'll come to that. There's quite a bit of thing that we're going to cover here. So if you look at it, the X's at the last 2 boxes means they are not available. For example, when you are sick, when you are tired, when you are sleepy, the number of bits shrink. It cannot be 120 bits. It will be much lesser, right? So it cannot be the 8 bytes. It could be much lesser. So the content of consciousness determines your state of consciousness as well. For example, if all the 8 boxes are filled with fear, then your consciousness at the energy level is different. If all the 8 boxes are filled with guilt, then it is different. If all the 8 boxes are filled with gratitude, then you are in a different energy level, right? So that's what the moment of consciousness implies. And then there is something called length and time of your consciousness. I think there's a typo there. How long are you completely in that state? For example, more often than not, once we finish our meditation process, We are absolutely mindful, absolutely alert, absolutely conscious. But some of us, that state exists for a few minutes, for a couple of hours. Then we get back to work, or when we start interacting with people outside, suddenly things flood in, right? Anger comes in, resentment comes in, something didn't happen at the right time. And we become upset. We start judging, right? So then we lose track of the complete hold of consciousness. So there is a time span of how conscious, how completely conscious you are. So my dear friend, there are 3 dimensions of conscious awareness. Width is how much, how wide are you conscious, the breadth of consciousness. Content is what goes into your consciousness, and duration is how long are you in that state. For example, we don't want to be long enough in a state where my conscious moments are filled with those low energy emotions, right? I don't want to be continuing my grief, my resentment, my judgment, my anger, my craving for a long time. At the same time, on the other hand, I'd want to continue the state of trust, the state of peace, the state of gratitude for a long time. I want to carry that state of conscious awareness for a long time, right? So that is what the duration happens. So the models of consciousness are usually based on those 3 parameters. Now, let's get into what goes in each of those moments. As I speak, I'm talking, I'm bringing some English words into the moments of consciousness. I'm also moving my hand like this. I'm completely conscious of that. I'm also conscious of whether the Zoom is working or not, right? So there are all these happening in my 120 bits of consciousness right now. So where are those bits of consciousness coming from? So like Brahmarshi Patriji says, he gives us a simple model of consciousness. This is the second model of consciousness we're talking about today, right? There are 3 levels. Number 1 is anything that comes from our identity or ego, anything that seeks to preserve our identity, preserve our ego. That is called identity or ego consciousness. The second level of consciousness is a linear or logical or learned consciousness. As I mentioned, the way I am talking, my English words comes from my learned consciousness. It's in my memory. I know what to talk. I know what to read, right? All that is coming from my linear or logical consciousness. And the third level of consciousness is the universal soul or cosmic consciousness. This is where things happen magically. This is where you get connected to the collective consciousness. Remember, that was an attribute of consciousness that we had. Collective consciousness, that intelligence, collective intelligence that we bring in, that is called the universal or cosmic consciousness. Now, fitting this in our framework, at any moment of time, our moment of consciousness can be filled this way, right? For example, the first option is I may be fearful. For example, tomorrow I have a meeting, I have an interview, or I have an exam, right? There is a little sense of fear in us. So of the eight bytes, 3 bytes are filled with that fear, emotion of fear. And then the remaining 3 are filled with logical. Obviously, we need a bit of those logical linear mind to carry our operations in the world. As you continue eating, as you continue going through the day, there is that fear lurking in our mind, right? That's what we call it. That fear is there in your consciousness. It doesn't allow us to be fully expressive the way you might be expressive once the meeting is over, once the examination is over. And similarly, there is a sense of I which comes from our ego. Oh my God, what if I don't do well? Why is the fear coming? Fear is coming from, fear is an attribute of ego, right? So that is what, so that clouds your consciousness. When you are free, for example, when you are meeting your friend, what happens? Fear drops away. You don't have that fear. You're meeting your friend after a long time, you're enjoying the whole duration, right? That time, what happens? Instead of fear, there is joy filled in that consciousness, but there may be a bit of, for some people, there may be a bit of resentment. Oh my God, I'm just going to meet him or her for 2 hours. or just a couple of days. After that, what we think about the future, that fills our consciousness. So similarly, hate is another thing. You're going into work, and then you're having to work with one person whom you really hate. So as you get into the office, you will have that person's mind, right? So that occupies a bit of consciousness. That's what we mean by, so at any moment of time, anything that clouds your consciousness, it can be clouded from that ego consciousness or ego mind, right? How do we transform our consciousness? As we continue to do our practices, as we continue to do our meditative practices or spiritual practices, the moments of consciousness slowly, the content of consciousness or the content of every moment of consciousness changes. So let's say, for example, let's say I'm a fearful person. I fear for my identity. I fear someone will accuse me of something, right? So then always, anytime I talk, anytime I get into a meeting, anytime I meet someone new, I always have this, oh, what is he going to think about it? So if you look at those 8 bits, at least 5 are colored with that I. I means your identity consciousness. L is logical or linear consciousness. So you need that, the way we talk and things like that, right? And then over time, as I understand spiritual science, I gain more wisdom. I do more of energy practices. I slowly free up that fear. I slowly free up the fear of identity. I let go of my ego consciousness. What happens? More bandwidth of my every moment of consciousness is allowed to spend spontaneously, right? I'm able to completely focus, completely concentrate on the speaking, on the working, instead of having that fear. There is still a bit of I there. As we continue to do that, as we continue to shed the lower energy levels coming from our ego consciousness, and we continue to make space for the you. You is the universal consciousness. We talked about 3. So you is that universal consciousness of love, gratitude, miracles, magic. So we are allowing the soul consciousness to come in to our moments of consciousness. That's what happens. So you'll have to make way, empty the bandwidth in your moment of consciousness for the soul to work its magic, for the soul to perform its healing, for you to tap into that innate intelligence. Mostly what happens, we are slow hung up on our logical mind. We know this is how it needs to happen. And we seldom allow the inner intelligence, inner wisdom of our true consciousness or true nature or divinity. This is how it happens. And this is a continuous process. As we continue doing the practice again and again and again, we slowly free up our ego. And then, as all of you know, Anapanasati meditation, in Anapanasati meditation, a lot of those internal emotions gets freed up. I think we're going to talk about it. Some of those fears, some of those griefs automatically get cleansed up. When you cleanse those emotions from inside you, then you are freeing up those bites for your divine consciousness to be part of it. Right? So again, going back to this map. So if you look at it, there are these 3 levels which easily map onto ego consciousness, linear consciousness or material consciousness, and then we have the universal or soul consciousness. Right? So that is how consciousness works. We have every moment is different. Every moment is different. And the challenge is every moment we'll have to be mindful of ensuring the moment is completely utilized in something that we completely focus on. And we allow things to populate from linear or soul consciousness and do not allow it to be crowded with the energies or the emotions of our ego consciousness. All right. So behavior arises from the level of one's consciousness. We saw that, right? For example, if your moments of consciousness, your level of consciousness is more about fear, anger, craving, grief, shame, then our behavior is similar. For example, if you think meeting someone who's probably spoken something about you some time ago, or someone who's giving you a hard time at work, right? If you think about that particular person, or you're going to meet that particular person, then your behavior completely changes, right? Whereas you're going to meet someone you love, someone, one of your friends, one of your family members, or whoever it is, you are comfortable with the person, your behavior changes. That's what it means. Behavior arises from the level of one's consciousness. And that is why study and practicing all these consciousness altering techniques is so important. Now, with that framework of consciousness, let's look at a few models of consciousness. There are a lot of models of consciousness out there, but we're going to look at it from 4 perspectives, more from our physiological level. What does consciousness mean to the brain? How does mind play a role in a consciousness? And then mind and consciousness again are usually interchanged as well. And then how does consciousness evolve through our life? And finally, when our soul incarnates in this body in this lifetime, it undergoes a journey through different levels of consciousness. We will look at it subsequently towards the end. Obviously, we're going to talk more about it later. So first, let's look at the neuroscience model of consciousness. Some of you may be familiar with this, having read a lot of books written by neuroscientists. So the neuroscience model of consciousness is primarily based on the brain. Neuroscientists, more of the at least the earlier neuroscientists, a lot of people believe. Yeah, so they think brain is the source and destination of consciousness. And obviously the later studies have proven that brain is just an instrument of consciousness, an instrument that makes you conscious, but it is not the source of consciousness, right? So we'll talk about that in one of the later classes. Where does consciousness reside? So the neuroscience model is very simple. Again, there are multiple models, but this neuroscience model has, they call it as 3 brains, 4 minds model. So we have these 3 brains called the neocortex, which is the human brain, the limbic system, which is more the emotional brain. So what we call as the conscious brain, the subconscious brain, and the unconscious brain, right? So similarly, neocortex is your conscious brain, and limbic system is your emotional brain, and your reptilian complex, which is, it is more about survival and reproduction. That's more, they also called as instinctive brain. And only humans have evolved. Originally, if you look at the primitive animals, they all have only the reptilian brain. And as human beings evolved, they were given all this prasad of all these emotions, right? That is what is this emotional brain. And then we have the unique ability to think, to create, right? And that came through the outer brain or the neocortex. And that results in 4 states of consciousness. We have a conscious mind where we think consciously, as I talked about. Subconscious mind is where the long-term memory, emotions, creativity, habits, all, okay, we'll cover that. Unconscious mind is basically something that you're not conscious of, like your automatic pulse beating, automatic heart beating, your blood pressure regulating, all that you're really not conscious of. They're all happening. Your immune system, a lot of things happening in your blood as the blood flows around, as you breathe in, a lot of metabolic process happening, your digestive system, all that is unconscious to you. You don't think, oh, what is happening, right? And then there is a superconscious mind, which pretty much relates to our soul consciousness. That is where it connects to your intuition, your creativity, your healing. The definition of consciousness we spoke about is actually the superconscious mind. So in our brain, we have these different areas as part of the neocortex. So as you can see, the prefrontal cortex is the one that we always exercise during meditation. That is the area responsible for us to pay more attention, right? And then temporal lobe is responsible for language, frontal lobe is responsible for emotion, decision making. There is a different part responsible for movement and coordination. There is a somatosensory cortex responsible for sensation. There is one part of it responsible for sensory information, touch and feeling. Another part responsible for visual. Another part responsible for auditory and movement. So when you are completely conscious, all these parts of the brain are working in synchrony. When they are completely working in synchrony, that means your brain is in a state of coherence. You are in a state of coherence. That is what some of you know the definition of mindfulness. We talk about when you are mindful, your entire brain is exercising perfectly. Usually what happens, we are so focused on thinking, which is your frontal lobe, and your prefrontal cortex. We don't even know what feelings are happening. Right? We don't even know. We are probably listening to something and thinking about something. We are seeing something and thinking about something. So that means you are not in coherence. That means you are not at an optimal level of consciousness. When you are in the present moment, completely focused on all these functions well. And one of the culprits for us to not be in completely conscious is what we call as the limbic system. This is called the emotional brain, right? So this amygdala is responsible for all our emotions. All the lower numbers that you saw on that map of consciousness is because of this. It has memory, right? It is the one that feeds in all the emotions of fear, emotions of grief, emotions of desire, craving, all that come from here. In meditation, in deep meditation, this particular part gets silenced. And that is why when you are in deep meditation and come out of the deep meditation, you are not as emotional, as reactive as maybe used to be. That is because this part of the brain gets silent. There are numerous research studies that have talked about it. And all of us feel that every day, right? And some days when you don't do meditation, you'll observe that a simple trigger would kind of get you back into this emotional drama, right? Whereas when you meditate, you kind of take time to say it doesn't influence you as much as the other way. That's all because of this limbic system. And I will go past this neurofacts. We'll come back later in terms of how the brain responds, right? I mean, it just takes 500 milliseconds or half a second for information from the outside to be incorporated. We'll get there. So, so this is the equivalent mind system model corresponding to our different brains. So all of you are familiar with this. Again, there are a lot of different mind system models. And this is the mind system model that corresponds to the model that we're talking about. There's a conscious mind, there is subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is just a repository. Test takes in whatever you think, right? All our emotions, beliefs, habits, feelings, attitudes, long-term memories, everything come in. So again, taking the usual example of driving a car, right? So as you continue driving your car, you've been driving the same route for the last 2 years. You don't consciously remember the route, or you don't consciously remember to switch the gear. All that happens subconsciously. That is because you got into that habit, right? Similarly, someone who's practicing a skill, learning singing, as they continue to practice, it gets settled in your subconscious mind. And anytime someone asks you to sing, you automatically come out. Where does it come from? The memory and the emotions come from the subconscious mind. And then the consciousness that we're talking about, super consciousness, the innate intelligence, the divinity, all that is the superconscious or the higher mind part of it, right? And the thicker the subconscious, it relates to our subconscious brain or the limbic brain, very little of your superconscious you'll be able to access. So we need to silence the subconscious mind to be really able to connect to our inner consciousness. And some of you know what happens in the brain as we continue to meditate, right? I mean, the brain goes through different waves. The brain waves are at different speeds. As the brain waves go into alpha and theta, we're able to access the deeper states of our consciousness, right? We're able to access the subconscious mind and the superconscious mind. So this is what happens. Again, this is a graphic from Joe Dispenza's book. So the brainwave function, as our brain gets into alpha and theta and delta, we access our subconscious mind. That is where we remove the cravings. We cleanse it of the fear. We cleanse it of any unhelpful emotions, right? And then that's what happens. And then as those emotions die down, and as your limbic brain silences, you're able to connect into your superconscious state, right? And that is meditation removes those subconscious patterns, those pre-programmed patterns that causes fear, that causes jealousy, that causes hatred. All that things slowly, automatically get cleansed up during meditation. You can do it consciously also, and some of you know the books like The Power of Subconscious Mind. By conscious things like affirmations, things like prayer, things like auto-suggestion, you can also do the same thing, right? We learned something fearful that went and sat in our subconscious mind. Now we can unlearn it by giving it a positive affirmation, and that goes and sits into your subconscious mind, and that happens. Subconscious mind just records whatever you feel and think. That is all. It doesn't have any other intelligence, right? So instead of recording harmful thoughts and harmful emotions, if you record positive thoughts and positive emotions, that goes and changes the nature of your subconscious mind. So that is one model of consciousness. And then the next model of consciousness we're going to look at is from the yogic science. Yoga, Vedic science, Upanishads have again multiple models of consciousness, and we're going to look at one model from yogic science. Again, this is something common across most of the philosophies. So in yoga, we call consciousness or awareness as chitta. Some of you, or most of you probably know. Chitta is a pure awareness or pure consciousness. And we are that, and that is what we started this whole conversation with, right? We have the qualities of consciousness. So chitta has intelligence, chitta has abundance, chitta has perfection, right? Those 6 qualities we talked about. The reason we are not able to be always with that pure awareness, that super conscious state, is because what Patanjali talks about as waves of the mind. There are these waves in that consciousness that hide that consciousness. Remember, we spoke about the clouds. This is a different analogy where you have, they talk about the analogy of a lake, right? If that lake is still, you're able to see the superconscious mind or intelligence that is down at the bottom of the lake. But mostly there are waves on the surface of the lake. There are rubbish. There is, things like dirt on the surface of the lake that does not allow you to see your real consciousness. So yoga is basically that, right? The union of body, mind, and intelligence, which is what we call it coherence as well. It's nothing but chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is nothing but arresting or stopping or silencing the waves on the surface of consciousness. That's what we are talking about during this course as well. How do I remove the clouds that hide the light of my consciousness? How do I arrest the waves that are on the surface of my consciousness, prevent me to be with my consciousness, right? So what causes the waves? And again, yogic philosophy, yogic science has these 3 things. Some of you might be aware. There is buddhi, ahamkara, and manas. Your intellect, the ego center, and manas, which is more the senses. And manas basically is that center that gives you, that collates everything to the senses. The fact that you're craving for that particular condition, the fact that you're craving for the particular sweet, the fact that you're craving to be in an AC room while it is hot outside is all because of the senses, right? And that is talking by manas. So these 3 cause the waves on the surface of the consciousness. These 3 hide things from our awareness. These 3 are the ones that cause those clouds that prevent us to be with our conscious state or consciousness, right? But then, do all of those thoughts and emotions, so these 3 always gives rise to thoughts and emotions. Buddhi, ahamkara, and manas, ego, intellect, and manas always gives rise to thoughts and emotions, right? So are all thoughts and emotions wrong? Is it not right to have any thoughts and emotions? And Patanjali answers this very neatly in Yoga Sutra, which is again a wonderful manual for those of you interested to study about mind. So he says there are 5 different, the 5 vrittis or the waves are those 5 different types. Those at any point of time in our brain, we have those 5 different types of waves. So going from the bottoms, when we are asleep, remember we talked about sleep as one state of consciousness. So sleep is one state of mind where it causes waves, right? Sleep also goes into dreams, something like that. Then memory, anytime you have a thought, anytime you're recollecting, that creates a wave in your mind or consciousness. And then a lot of us are in assumption, we keep daydreaming, there's a lot of imagination going on. Okay, so once this class is over, I need to go, my next steps during this evening is probably go look at the IPL match or watch a movie, or maybe there is something that's going to happen tomorrow. I need to plan for that. Your mind, there is some imagination happening. Those are all waves on the surface of your consciousness or intelligence, right? And then there is incorrect knowledge, something that we learn but do not experience. Patanjali calls any knowledge that you learn but do not experience as incorrect knowledge. There's a lot of assumption in it. That's indirect knowledge. And then the only correct knowledge is something that we experience, something that we infer. So there are the 5 types of waves. Is it good to have all these 5 types of waves, or is it bad to have all these 5 types of waves? It isn't bad. The only time it is bad is when these 5 vrittis are colored by these things from our ego consciousness, identity consciousness. These are called kleshas. When these 5 vrittis or 5 thoughts get colored, for example, it is good to be imagining that I'm going to watch a match or I'm going to watch a movie. But if that gets colored with the fear, oh, I don't know whether, so let's assume I'm supporting one particular team and I need the team to win badly. If that team doesn't win, then I'm taking in some grief. So that kind of thought is not good. But a thought without any of these colors of fear, ignorance, ego, likes and dislikes, attachment, aversion, right? Raga, dvesha, asmita, nivesha, and avidya. So these are the 5 types. So any thought that gets colored with any of these 5 results in us getting those lower numbers on the energy scale. Those all come from identity consciousness, ego consciousness. They are harmful. Any thoughts that do not get colored by these 5 are okay. That's what Patanjali says. And that happens when we are really conscious, when we are really mindful. There's an acronym here, it's called FEEL, right? Again, there's a lot of things out there. And this to summarize this, what Patanjali says is, from living in a material world, materialistic world, from your identity consciousness to moving to your soul consciousness, he says there are these 5 vrittis or 5 waves of mind or 5 states of mind. In you can call them as the 5 states of consciousness in the yogic world. And this could be klishta or aklishta, as I said, right? If these 5 are colored with ego, ignorance, attachments, clinging, and hatred, they result from your rajasic and tamasic qualities. Again, deep yogic science. Then they are wrong, they are negative. But if they are coming with no desire and you are clearly discriminating, you're clearly conscious of that particular thought, then they are colored as positive. So that's the way for you to move from bhoga to yoga. Yoga is nothing but connecting with your inner consciousness, connecting with your intelligence. That's what we're talking about throughout, right? We talked about the qualities of consciousness. We talked about how our brain represents that consciousness, and then how there is an emotional part of the brain that prevents you from being completely using the conscious moments. And then here is the mind view into it. All right, and then very similar, as you know, Yoga Sutras and yoga are very closely related to what to talk about in multiple philosophies as well. And here are a couple of slides that talks about the Buddhist view of consciousness. In Buddhism, they talk about these 9 levels of consciousness: smell, taste, touch. This is very similar to the mind part of it. I think there's a different picture. I'll quickly relate to how it relates to what the mind part of yoga, right? So sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, each of that is a conscious, one level of consciousness, right? So that is why they talk about, when they talk about mindfulness, it's all of them put together. And then number 6 is the integration of the sensory data, right? I'm seeing something, hearing something, smelling something, right? I know there is some favorite dish being cooked. Then immediately there is this mind that brings into saying that is that particular dish. It could be coffee, it could be roti, it could be a dish, right? So that what's that. Level 6 is that integration. There is some, the intellect tells you this is that particular dish. And then there is a mind that says, oh, I don't like that dish. I like that dish. Very similar to do with songs, right? Or anything. And then 7 is ego. And then 8 is memory. And 9 is the Buddha nature. Buddha nature is that supreme consciousness or super consciousness we talk about, right? Here again, if you go back, map it to our subconscious, and superconscious. The outer circle is your conscious. The middle 3 circles are your subconscious, which also holds your memory. And then your Buddha nature is your superconscious. So very, very similar model that we are looking at, right? And this is how it works. So the 1 to 5, your sight, hearing, touch, smell, and a bit of thought, which is also the sixth sense. So yeah, the mind takes inputs from all of those, and then the sixth and seventh levels of consciousness look at your internal story and assigns it an emotion and tells you this is what it is, right? And then the eighth is your memory, and then seventh is the ego. So ego self is what tells your story, right? For example, two people watching the same movie, two people having the same dish, two people doing the same work, experience things differently. That is because the seventh level of consciousness is different. Though they are hearing the same things, seeing the same things, touching and feeling the same thing, and in their memory, they know this is what they need to do, but the seventh level of consciousness, which is based on their, on their self emotions, whether aversion, attraction, craving, their level of vasanas, is that seventh level, is what gives them that experience of what is happening at that particular point of time, right? And the ninth level of consciousness is not shown in this picture, which is more the Buddhist or superconscious, right? So this is the Buddhist view of consciousness. We've looked at several models of consciousness now, right? So now we looked at consciousness from the perspective of brain, from the perspective of mind, and from the perspective of, so we're just going to move into the perspective of life, right? We'll just cover this in 10 minutes and dive into meditation before we continue further, all right? So this is another fantastic work done by a person named Mary O'Malley. So she's written a good book called What's in the Way is the Way. And it talks about the 6 phases of consciousness. It's about moving from unconsciousness to higher consciousness. What do we do in life? How we perceive life given our state of consciousness. All right. So level 1 is when all of us have started that because of the programming of the society, because of the way our education system is set up, right? So we start off thinking like life happens to me, right? Initially, before meditation, before spiritual science, before you got into this curiosity of knowing all these, this is how all of us work. In fact, even I went through all these stages, right? I've been initially when we were taught, okay, so things happen to me, right? You have a thing of blaming and complaining. Things didn't happen because I didn't get this mark because the teacher did not teach me well, whereas the teacher taught the other person well, so he got higher marks. This is a common response when I or anyone, when you're asked by your parent, why did you not get the same amount of marks as the other person, right? Or the examination paper did not have the questions that I knew, right? So it's always about blaming, about complaining, could be at relationships, could be at things didn't happen well. Why do things happen to me? There is a problem, someone is at fault, someone should fix it. That is the first initial state of consciousness all of us are, right? Life happens to me. That is my destiny. That is my karma. That is how it is. I can't do anything about it. So this is a posture of a victim, right? I am helpless. What do I do? So that's all of us are used to be in that particular state for some period during our life. Or you can see quite a few people in that state, right? And then the next we move. So we are so helpless. We are thinking it is all someone else's fault. And then we decide to take charge of the situation. Then we hear things like, hey, you create your reality, right? You are the creator. Now problems are here for me to learn from. I created the problem, I can solve it. And then we have the likes of a lot of wonderful masters like Joe Dispenza, like Dawson Church, telling us that you change your thoughts, you change your emotions, then what you manifest is different, right? And then Brahmashi Patriji and a lot of spiritual masters talk about Bhavam Tad Bhavati, right? You change your world and your outer world will reflect your inner state, right? And then the reason you are besieged with problems is because of thoughts and emotions. And then we set about changing our thoughts, set about changing our emotions. Oh, this is a situation I need to learn from. So let me move from fear to gratitude. Let me move from craving to trust, right? So we do that. And then we get a sense of personal empowerment. Okay, so life is not all that bad. And I have the power to change life, change my reality with it. We continue to do that, and then we follow a lot of those practices in terms of manifestation, which works for somebody, which works for someone. For the same person, it works in some areas, it doesn't work in some other area, right? And then sometimes we felt a bit disappointed. Okay, in spite of me doing all that, in spite of me thinking all that, things didn't happen. Then we get into that cycle, but then we consider everything as a learning cycle, right? And then slowly we move to the next stage. We realize, okay, so I am not able to control all that is out there. I can control a limited set of things, but then there are a lot of things that happen outside, right? And then we start realizing, okay, so my view of life is because of the way I think. Very similar to the earlier stage, right? My thoughts and emotions shape my experience of life. We start realizing, this is the stage where we say you see things, you do not see things as they are, you see things as you are, right? It depends on the kind of glasses I wear. If I wear a glass of mistrust, misbelief, then everything I look at will be from that angle. Whereas if I wear a glass of injustice, then I feel miserable all the time. Okay, why did this happen to me? This is how it is. Maybe it's because of my past karmas. It goes back to the level one, right? So now in this phase of life or phase of consciousness, we start realizing, okay, so all that suffering is because of the stories in me. We just saw how the mind works. But because of stories in me, because of the pre-program in me, right? So I and my colleague work at the same place, but my colleague goes home enthusiastic every day. But for me, it is different, right? I think it as a burden. That is because something in me is actually giving me that experience, but not him, right? So suffering comes from stories inside me. And then you start looking at, okay, it all depends on what happens in me. And then once you start paying attention in me, that is what we do as part of mindfulness and meditation practice. Once we start looking at life happening in me, we're open to life, right? Okay, so we are saying, okay, let me look at things as they are, right? Rather than being colored. This is where the coloring of kleshas come in, right? The kleshas, anytime you don't color it by kleshas, you see life as they are. And then as you continue to progress, there is the next level of consciousness we get into, and we start seeing some magic happen, right? And then we are open up, okay, life is happening for me, right? And then I don't need to control anything. I don't need to react. Life is happening for me. Life knows what is best for me. It's absolutely wonderful. I don't need to do anything. I just need to experience life. There are the situations happening one after the other. There are coincidences showing up one after the other, right? And I do not need to mold and shape life. I do not need to say I want that. I do not need to say I need to go there, right? Things happen, whatever is best for the evolution of my soul. So this in this state we are free flowing liveness. We experience the joy of openness, right? It's all about acceptance. Whatever happens, so definitely pain happens, definitely suffering happens, definitely bad things happen. There are going to be good days, there are going to be dark days, right? But in this case, we know, okay, fine. Today is it's a good day. Today is a bad day, right? And you just leave it at that. Something happened, so you accept it and move on. There is a reason. You don't continue to analyze it. Life happens for me, and whatever happens to me, it's always in the direction of my consciousness, my soul to evolve into that higher level of consciousness. And then we slowly move on to the level 5, which is life happens through me. To happen, you're allowing wonder, right? And here you start slowly tapping into that innate consciousness, that divinity in you. Things are perfect. Remember, one of the attributes of consciousness we learned was perfection, right? Things are perfect, things are whole, things are complete. Life handles all apparent problems. This doesn't mean passivity. This means enthusiasm, right? What wants to happen through me? So you're more open. Okay, now let me do. So I'm going to do a help to somebody. I'm creating something. Your life expresses through you. You are a wonderful writer. You're a wonderful teacher. You're a wonderful singer. You're a great parent, right? So you go do service in the society. So all that happens through you. You're allowing it to you without your emotions stopping you. Why should I do it? What is the benefit for me? So those are all state level 1 or level 2, right? Those are all the ego consciousness. Now here you're allowing your super or your soul consciousness to flow through you in this level. Then finally, which is a state all of us aspire when we think we are enlightened, is about life is me. I see life the same way in another person. I see the life the same way, consciousness in another animal, another living being, non-living beings, right? So they're just oneness. There are no problems, nothing to solve. This is how things happen. I go creating, right? And you experience oneness, non-dualism, unlimited freedom and peace. Again, a couple of attributes of consciousness, right? So these are the 6 levels, and then all of us go through at least level 1 to 5, and level 6 is something we go through these levels over multiple lifetimes. And for some of us practicing the spiritual things and having this understanding of this wisdom, it's possible for us to go through these during the same lifetime at different stages. And again, just because you experienced level 5 one day doesn't mean that you are at level 5 all through, right? There are stages where your consciousness slips to a level 1 or a level 2 and then come back. But the ability to manage that consciousness is what we call as mindfulness, or we call is that space that allows you to that moments of consciousness. You're able to be aware of those and then control those. That's what we talk about, right? So with that overdose of information, with that things about consciousness, right? So now let's dive into a practice that some of us have been practicing definitely, that builds up our awareness, right? Gautam Buddha found this practice called Anapanasati. He's documented this whole practice in a sutra called Anapanasati Sutra. And it has 4 levels. The way you become aware, way you practice awareness. First is number 1, you practice awareness of your breath and body. You practice awareness of your breath and body. Number 2, you practice awareness or become mindfulness of your feelings. That is step 2. And step 3, you become more mindful of your thoughts. And once you go through all this, then you start connecting to a superconscious mind, and you start becoming aware of all the truths. Things are impermanent. That's what all these map onto the 6 levels of consciousness, map onto different states of mind. So everything is all interrelated, right? It's about moving from ego consciousness to linear consciousness to soul consciousness. All right. And the tool that is prescribed is just the breath. So just like, keep giving this example, just like a cricketer uses net practice to practice, just like a singer uses all those practice sessions to learn something difficult before a performance, our meditation practice is that practice session for us to develop awareness, to develop mindfulness, so that suddenly there is this thought, oh, why am I feeling fearful? Why am I feeling anger? Why am I judging, right? So it allows you to find that become aware of that point before things move further, and allows you to shift your state of consciousness manually. All right. So, my dear friends, we'll get into 30 minutes of breathfulness meditation. Some of you might be practicing it wonderfully well. And as you see, I'll just quickly share one slide on it. So, all of you know the posture is very simple. So, you can sit comfortably on a chair or on the floor with your hands clasped, with your feet crossed at the angle, sitting on a chair. And we'll play some music. Before that, before we start, we'll do the relaxation of long in-breath and long out-breath for a few minutes, and then slowly ease into watching our normal, natural breath, observing our natural breath. The more we pay attention to our breath, the more our emotional brain silences, and that reduces the thoughts that we are getting. And as we reduce the number of thoughts, we become more aware of the feelings and sensations happening in our body. That's the science behind meditation. Let's slowly bring your attention onto your breath. Observe your breath as you inhale and exhale. Right, the breath is a variety of things. Right, your in-breath is, sometimes your in-breath is shorter, or sometimes out-breath is shorter. Right, sometimes you breathe in from your left nostril, sometimes you breathe in from your right nostril. Sometimes you feel sensations in chest region. So there are a lot of things happening. You can pay attention to any of those. But to start with, just follow the cycle of your breath. You breathe in, breathe out, and there is probably a space between those two as well. So continue following your breath as you inhale and exhale normally and naturally. All right. So with that, let's ease up into a simple, comfortable posture, my dear friends. For those who are wearing spectacles, please remove your spectacles. Close your eyes, clasp your hands, cross your feet at the ankle if you're sitting on a chair. Sit upright but comfortable. Slowly begin your relaxation. Slow breathe in to the count of 4. Slow breathe out to the count of 4. This grounds you, this centers your awareness. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. Do not hold your breath. Do not strain yourself. It allows you to become conscious of your breath. Continue to do your slow and deep breathing. As you become conscious of your breathing, slowly start observing your normal, natural breath. Just follow your breath cycle. As you start your inhale, feel the breath, feel the air growing into your nostrils, feel the movements in your throat area, feel the movement in your chest and abdomen area. And as you exhale, similarly feel the movements in your abdomen, in your chest, in your throat region. And feel the sensations in your nose and feel the air passing through your nostrils. Pay precise attention to every part of your breath cycle. With no thoughts, no analysis, just observation. Just by observing your breath, you can alter your state of consciousness. Because breath is a tool to silence the noisy parts of the mind. Continue to follow your normal, natural breath cycle. Any thoughts, any other distractions can wait. The next 20 minutes, just observe your breath as closely as possible. Each of us are consciousness. Each of us are divinity. The practice of meditation allows us to unlearn all the things that have kept us away from that divinity. The perfect instrument is the breath. Place your attention completely on your breath. You're getting thoughts, that is okay. Recognize that, that is awareness. Recognize that and bring your attention back to your breath. Keep your eyebrows, your shoulders, and your neck completely relaxed. Just feel the beauty of your wonderful breath. Your breath is your guru. Being with your breath takes you to the path of higher consciousness. It allows you to connect to your inner light. Nothing else to be done. Just follow your breath. Do not analyze anything. Do not think about the music or any distractions. Just observe your breath. 10 more minutes. In this last 10 minutes, continue to pay attention to your breath. As you breathe in and breathe out, notice or observe any sensations throughout your body. Become aware of any thoughts that you're having. Become aware of any other sensations, any part of your body, as you breathe in and breathe out. Be conscious of only yourself, your breath, your body, and your feelings. Nothing else. Continue to stay relaxed. Continue to be with your breath. Wonderful, my dear friends. Continue to be with your breath. Place your awareness on your chest region as you breathe in and breathe out through your heart center. Feel a sense of gratitude for everything and every person in your life. Recall that you are consciousness, you are divinity, you are intelligence. You are perfect. Anything that makes you feel otherwise is not true. Feel grateful for the new awareness and the new wisdom that allows you to reconnect with your wisdom, reconnect with your intelligence. Feel grateful for seeing life as it is. Feel grateful for getting over the craving for life to be something else. Feel grateful for the joy of each moment. With that feeling of gratitude, feel the lightness and silence in yourself for the next 2 minutes. Now, my dear friends, slowly become aware of your body, your sitting, and your environment. Slowly relax your shoulders, your arms. Slowly unclasp your fingers. Place your fingers on your eyes for a few seconds and open when you are ready. Wonderful. So we will learn more about meditation and other best practices for us to always cause that shift in our consciousness next week. And so there's one more perspective that we will learn over the next few weeks. As I said, there's a 7 levels of human consciousness as it goes through the journey of life. As a soul incarnates on earth, the 7 levels of consciousness that it goes through, the wonderful work done by Richard Barrett. We will talk about this. It requires a lot more of discussion and examples. And that is the purpose. It is living the purpose of the soul through this human development, right? So it goes through the several stages or levels. The bottom 3 levels are, some of you might remember, are mapped to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The soul needs some energy field for it to survive in this 3-dimensional material world. So that is where the first 3 stages of survival, relationships, and self-esteem. This is what the ego provides. So we're going to cover in one of the classes of the soul needs ego and what is the use of ego in our whole experience, right? So those first three levels are more egocentric or ego consciousness, and then transform it, have one of special practices, and then our soul evolves into higher consciousness where we start expressing things, self-expression, finding meaning and purpose is an attribute, is a need for the soul. Then connecting to community, doing things for others, and contribution, which is more selfless service. We'll talk about all these, and that's kind of the journey or our quest for us as we transition from living in ego consciousness to living in soul consciousness. There are 2 things, 2 skills. Number 1 is awareness, and number 2 is acceptance. And there are a bunch of techniques that yogic science, neuroscience, and psychology have for us to enhance our awareness or get deep into acceptance. So we'll cover a few of those techniques next week. So next week, it's all about techniques. It's all about practices of altering our states of consciousness through awareness and acceptance. And we'll do again a special type of guided meditation next Saturday time. For those of you who have missed the last record this and then join us for next week, so please point them to the YouTube channel. There is a playlist. You must have got that playlist in the email confirmation that you received today. Or if you go to YouTube, Pyramid Valley International, and then type in Coherence, you'll be able to see the videos. All right, my dear friends, hope that was useful, and hope that was good. That is giving you a bit of good clarity and not confusing you with a lot of terms. Obviously, we'll get more clarity as we go down. 4 more classes. We have 4 more classes to do a lot. So with that, I'll open it up for a few questions. If any of you have any questions, we can take now. Please raise the hand in Zoom. Or if you want, you can type it on the chat window. I see something on the chat window. I'm sorry.
Sir, can we get recording?
Yes, sir. Recordings are available on YouTube. You go to YouTube, type Pyramid Valley International, and then followed by Coherence, you'll be able to find the recordings.
With whole slides?
Yes, this whole session recording with the slides. Yes, slides and my voice, including
Thank you
the
so much.
meditation. Welcome. So there is a question. Okay, so there's a direct question here on the chat window. Someone 90% of the time throughout their life have been having negative thoughts, negative visualization, guilt, inferiority complex. And are there any medical tests to check the limbic brain chemical levels? So I don't know who it is, but sir or madam, good that you realized that what you've been living through is not what you want to live through for the rest of your life. That's a shift in consciousness. That's a shift in awareness. Yes, there are tons of practices. There is no test per se, but yes, there are tons of practices that allow you to calm the limbic brain, calm the emotions, and move from that ego state, move from the negative mindset to a more positive mindset, improving sleep, improving health, improving emotional well-being. Again, meditation is one of the techniques. So stay with us. Next week you will see a lot more techniques, including breath work, meditation, and mind work. And then you can pick and choose what you want to do. But practice of meditation definitely starts dimming, silencing your limbic brain, silencing your emotional brain, and move you out of negativity to positive emotions. Because we have a hand raised, Mr. Rajesh Parmeshwaran. Do you want to unmute yourself, switch on your video, and ask your question?
Yes, namaste. Any practice meditation I'm doing, and when I fall into the trap of my ego, because of external situation, like getting frustrated or anger because of an external situation, I stop my practice. How can I ground myself to this meditation so that blast happens in me, that consciousness comes in me, and I am that. 2 months, 3 months, some incident happens and I just stop it. Then I move to something else. I keep on moving to many paths, and finally I'm nowhere. Please advise me.
Yes, sir. The realization that you are in that state and you want to change, and you know there are these practices that allow you to do is very good. See, it's just like this. The more you fall into that trap of anger, frustration, resentment, the more you want to get out of it, right? I mean, for example, you have a headache. What do? I mean, we somehow want to get out of it, right? That means you go look for pills, you go look for techniques, whatever it is, right? So very similar. Every time you get into that mode, and you should realize that meditation or spiritual practices probably will help you much better, right? And that in fact should motivate you to be sitting. It will be a bit difficult, but that sure is a big reason for you to sit and meditate, right? Just like, I give this analogy of we drive our cars. Suddenly in the windshield on a rainy day, there's a lot of mud that falls. What happens? We don't stop driving the car, right? And we don't stop driving the car and curse the mud or the rain. We switch on the wipers. After a while, something else happens. We switch on the wipers, right? Switching on the wipers is the process of meditation. It allows you to clean, calm. And as you continue to do that, time and again, slowly the frustration and anger, that feeling, those things that cause your frustration and anger will vanish, right? But it takes patience, it takes perseverance. Just like any activity, like running, learning music, learning any skill, meditation also takes that. But the good thing is you realize that, and that realization should allow you to, that be the big motivation for you to continue your practice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, meditation, sleepy, and again awareness. Yeah, that's all normal. How much time to do meditation each day? At this time, I would say a minimum of 30 minutes, minimum of 30 or 40 minutes. But then over time, as you continue, if you are a beginner, I would say 1 hour, because it takes time for you to settle down. If you're a beginner, please spend 60 minutes, just like the way you spend 60 minutes walking or exercise or spending time in front of the TV. So 60 minutes of breath mindfulness meditation, just allow you to focus on your breath every day. And as you have learned the skill of practicing or focusing your attention on your breath, then you can fall back to lesser duration. And then the formula is as many minutes as your age. Yeah, so I'm unable to pay attention to my breath. So next week we'll see some of the breath practices. Forceful conscious breathing like pranayama practices will help people struggling with thoughts and struggling with focus. That can be the beginning, and that will help you stabilize your mindset, and then you can start focusing on your breathing. What is the difference between consciousness and awareness? Both are almost the same. Awareness leads to consciousness, and then there are different levels of consciousness, as I said, right? And then there are synonymous. People use those in different words as well, different ways. So as I said, consciousness is nothing but being aware of your thoughts, being aware of what's happening outside completely. At a stretch, 60 minutes, yes, complete 60 minutes. Otherwise, it's like practicing to learn singing, right? You can't learn singing 5 minutes of a song now and then 5 minutes of a song later in the day. You have to spend continuous 60 minutes at a stretch, only then you learn to practice attention. All right, my dear friends, I think there are no more questions. So please do watch the recording again if it was overwhelming, and please do join us for the next session where we are going to cover quite a few techniques on how that will affect that will help you alter your state of consciousness, enhance your awareness, right? Be it negativity, be it OCD, whatever, it allows you to kind of move off from that state of consciousness to a different state of consciousness. And in this class, we learned those different levels of consciousness, and the techniques that we will see in the next class will allow you to progress from one to the next, or allow you to be in that next without falling back into a lower level of consciousness. All right. So with that, my dear friends, thank you. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your participation. It was great sharing the wisdom and teachings of masters and books with you, and enjoyed the group energies in this meditation today. Enjoy your weekend. Have a wonderful festival day as well. And see you next Saturday at the same time. Please invite a lot more of your friends and family to join these sessions. And all the recordings of the sessions are available on the Pyramid Valley YouTube channel. Thank you, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Recording stopped.
Welcome to the Pyramid Valley International, Bengaluru, India. The pyramid is meant for meditation. It has got the high energies. Enjoy the high energies of the Maitreya Buddha pyramid and the serene circumstances of this valley. Spiritual science is the basis for all other sciences. In spiritual science, we understand that we are all gods, come here of our own accord onto this earth planet to see that the earth planet becomes a heaven and not a hell. How we can transform this hell into a heaven, that is the subject matter of spiritual science. And masters of spiritual sciences are the experts in spiritual sciences. Meditation is the doorway for enlightenment. Enlightenment is the doorway for welfare, health, wealth, well-being, and joys in life. Meditation is the foundation of spirituality. Spirituality is the superstructure built on the foundation of meditation. Everybody should dedicate a couple of hours every day for meditation, every day. As we dedicate our life to meditation, we become a source of inspiration, joy, energy to everybody around, everything around, every being around. We emanate energy. We want to see the whole world become a joyful place for every being, every animal being, every plant being, every mineral being. That is the duty of every human being, to provide joy and energy to every other being.